All right, guys. We are back for another session with a wonderful provider. My name is Rita Stevens. I am the founder of Silent Voices, and Silent Voices is a nonprofit organization that provides advocacy and support for special needs children. Now, one of the ways that we do that is we actually invite providers like Sarah in, and they talk about services that they provide to our community so that we are more equipped to actually advocate for our kids. And so before we actually get into kind of the interview part of it, I want to turn it over to Sarah and she can give an introduction of herself and what she does and her why.
Oh, thank you so much, Rita. I have been so excited about joining you today. So I am Sarah. I am a mum of four. I am a wife of one. I have two dogs. I'm like kind of, do you know what I mean? Like home life is busy. My
Yeah.
older kids, I'm not allowed to call them kids anymore, I don't think, because my oldest is 23. And
Yeah.
so they object a little bit to the kids label, but they are my babies
Yeah.
forever and ever. My oldest also, as well as being the oldest, and being very proud of being the big sister, also lives with a complex brain injury and learning disability.
Okay.
She, people think that she is my why for the job that I do, but I was already doing my job before her diagnosis and everything. And do you know how frustrating is that my email pings and probably got picked up on your oh my
That's okay.
God. Never mind. So I grew up in a really weird house. My mum was a physiotherapist. She calls herself a recovering physiotherapist now. And my dad was an engineer. And my mum worked with people with learning disabilities. And I grew up, I had no idea
Right.
that the other kids in my class didn't spend time with people who don't necessarily use words to communicate or who just saw the world differently. I
Mm-hmm.
just had no clue until I was like a teenager that was maybe a bit different to the rest of my peers. So they worked on developing specialist equipment for people with learning disabilities and complex disabilities. And I thought I would escape that. I trained as a teacher. I did all sorts of stuff, and then it dragged me back. So I had been doing that work. Yeah. So
Calling.
yeah, I suppose it is a bit. So the late 1990s, I started working with families of children with complex disability, helping. Well, I was interested in how they manage at nighttime, and I had that work published, and that was all. I was kind of that was my thing, and I was just fascinated by it all. And then I became a parent of somebody who like was accessing services and stuff. So
Wow.
yeah, so all very grew up in it, love it, see both sides of it, having done kind of some work on either side of
Mm-hmm.
the bed, if you like.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in how when you talk about silent voices, I think the 2 in the morning voice is particularly silent between healthcare provider and family, but also in the evidence base.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's been a desperate lack of curiosity
Mm-hmm.
about how we manage through the night.
Absolutely. And that's why we're
Yeah.
actually here. So we want to talk about postural care, 24-hour postural
Mm.
care,
Yeah.
and why that is so important. And like I mentioned to Sarah before we actually decided to do the interview, it's like this information needs to be out there.
Yeah, it
Parents
so
need to
does.
be aware of how
Yeah.
important it is and why you have the company that you have, which is Simple Stuff Works. And
Yeah.
so she's actually based in the UK, and I'm super excited. It's 8 o'clock at night there. And she's dedicated,
And
guys,
I
and
am
she's trying
awake.
to do this interview. So, speaking of that, what do you think is probably the most understood thing about nighttime postural care? What do you think is most misunderstood about this whole process of caring for a child 24 hours a day when it
Mhm.
comes to that?
So, when we think about like posture, and
Mm-hmm.
if I do my best British accent, like sit up straight, Rita is like shoulders back, head up, chin proud. And I think there's like this kind of bossy finishing school type kind of, oh, like, just like
There's a misconception of
get,
what it really means.
yeah, and get real, like kind of
Yeah.
my kid's got enough going on without you like whinging that they're not sitting up straight or, So I think firstly, the biggest misconception is that like the sort of postural care is to do with being just really pedantic about somebody's like um yeah, just sort of
But they
being a bit
have to sit
bossy.
a certain type of way. They have to sit with
Yeah,
their shoulders
because
back.
exactly. And like why? My child does it
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
So my child is stunning and beautiful and she does it different.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff you,
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's a big thing. And then I think that people don't understand that someone's posture is actually all about is the way they hold their body,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about their body shape and their body structure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a typical body shape and body structure, then your organs are in the right place.
Mm.
If you don't, then what happens is the contents of your tummy always win. They will always, like if there's not enough room. So if you are
Mm-hmm.
bent over to the side, say,
Mm-hmm.
the contents of your tummy will win. They will push up and they will give you less space for your lungs and for your heart. They will
Mm.
make it more difficult for you to take a nice deep breath.
Mm.
And for those kids with more complex disability, there are lots of secondary problems around increased risk of chest infection and, just living in a body that's comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. So I think, Rita, we need to kind of redefine what we're talking about because it's not about like sit up straight. It's
Mm-hmm.
about what can we do to keep our kids. When our kids are born, generally, they have a symmetrical body.
Mm-hmm.
How do we protect that beautiful structure so that all of the stuff that kids want to do to play and learn and be with their friends and live as healthy a life as possible, they can do that in a body that is the shape it's meant to be.
I'm so glad you said that because, I never really thought about that. When you have a typical body, your organs are in the right place, right?
Yeah.
But when they're kind of used to turning and curving, things kind of move around.
Hmm.
So the
Yeah.
importance of having that support and that structure around them is even more important for
Yeah.
us to do it.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the changes you've seen when parents are not able to do or have not done kind of 24-hour or nighttime postural care? What are some of the changes you typically can see in your child happening?
So, like on a population level, we know that those kids with the more complex disability, so there's a thing called the gross motor function classification scale.
Mm,
So GMFCS. And therapists will use that to kind of group kids so that they get an idea. And it's not to label children, it is to give people, if someone says that someone has GMFCS 5,
mm-hmm,
it means that they have got really limited ability to move their own body.
mm,
And that just tells a therapist that there are things that they need to think about that they might not think about with a child with GMFCS 3. So it's not about labels, it's about highlighting some of the risks for those kids.
mm,
And what we know is that those kids with GMFCS 4 and 5 are more prone to things like hip dislocation, scoliosis. They're more likely to struggle with things like repeated chest infections and on a on a really and I know that parents, we are a resilient bunch of
mm,
people, yeah.
absolutely.
And sometimes clinicians don't want to tell us some of the things that are more likely for our children because they don't want to upset us. But
Yeah.
that leaves us unarmed.
Mm-hmm,
We have to like, we have to look our deep, like we have to look stuff in the eye and know it so that we can then be like, we can take steps to defend our kids against stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So these children are more likely to die prematurely because of secondary complications relating to their disability.
Hmm.
So the most like we know that in the UK, the most common cause of premature mortality for people with learning disabilities is pneumonia and aspiration pneumonia. And
Hmm.
we like more than 50% of individuals who die prematurely, that's kind of the cause of death. So those are the sorts of challenges that we see. And we also see for those more complex children, more pain. They live with more pain. And
Mm-hmm.
it's often combined with the kind of double whammy for them is that they're less able to communicate with people who don't know them very well. We know when our kids are in pain.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily know where. We don't know the
Yeah.
exact like
Yeah.
where, and
No.
we don't know, well, yeah, and what's going to be the thing that's going to work to do
Yeah.
something about it.
Mm-hmm.
um and the other thing to say is that complex children need complex solutions, so it won't just be positioning, good positioning over 24 hours. It
Mm-hmm.
may also be surgery, and it may also be medication, and it may also be active therapy, and it's probably a combination of all of those things. But if we don't get the positioning right over as much of 24 hours as we can,
Mm-hmm.
then all of those other things will be less effective. To the way our child, like the way that children communicate, if they're also sitting in a
Bad
an
position.
uncomfortable bad position,
Mm-hmm.
their communication will be impacted by that, you know. So everything is like, if you think about the position that we support our children in for the majority of their 24 hours, everybody needs time like doing their own thing, but if we can
Mm-hmm.
get it right for like as much of 24 hours as we can, that provides you with a foundation, a solid, stable foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we build on that with everything else.
Yeah.
Without that stable foundation, the other stuff might happen, but it won't be as effective. And it you know, we're not going to get the most out of the opportunities that our kids deserve.
Absolutely. And you actually said two key things that I just, for me were like nuggets. And one was understanding what that score is so
Mm-hmm.
that you know what to ask for. So I think
Mm-hmm.
as parents, it's okay, like you said, head on, face it, ask the question.
Yeah, yeah.
How is my child categorized? And then I
Yep.
think that can help lead into what types of things should I be considering.
Absolutely. And it could be that if you don't know kind of it could be that if you're in the world of Dr. Google and you're searching around for something, and it could be that a therapy comes up and you're like, this could be good. This, and kind of, we need to be so aware of
Mhm.
like
Everything.
the, oh God, yeah,
It feels
totally.
like everything. Be aware of
Everything.
everything.
Exactly. And isn't it amazing, the community? Because when we drop into this world, I was so lucky that when I dropped into this world, I already knew it existed. And I
Hmm.
already knew some really key people that have been so central to my journey as a parent.
Hmm.
Um, and I've thought, I can't remember how many times it's crossed my mind where I'm like, I don't know how parents cope if they didn't have the team that I already had.
Yeah.
Like, because you're it, aren't you?
You don't know. You don't know
And
what you
if
don't
you,
know. And
yeah,
honestly, that's why we exist, because that space is the space that we came into.
yeah,
No
like
clue.
what? Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
as parents, you don't know. People say this saying, and now I get it. You don't know what you don't
What you
know,
don't know,
right?
exactly
So
that.
you don't know how to ask for things if you
No,
don't know. And
no,
so parents, one of the ways you can do that, just like Sarah said, is asking upfront, how is my child categorized?
yeah. Where are we on this scale of like kids that need some stuff? Where are we?
Yeah,
you
where are
know?
we and what do we need? What do we need to be
Yeah,
considering? Because I think when we ask those questions, we're more apt to ask more questions based
yeah,
on what they're saying. It'll kind
yeah,
of give you an idea of where to go. So
yeah.
the second thing you said was comfortability, for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
When they're sleeping, have them as comfortable as possible.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
they're in a very weird position, it's not really comfortable. And just like you and I, if we're uncomfortable, like we get super hot or we're cold or the bed is uncomfortable, we don't sleep
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah.
And that lack of sleep, it just kind of exacerbates whatever else is going on.
Nothing's good if we're
No.
tired. Nothing's good. Oh, like,
Not it.
you know what I mean? You're in the biscuit tin. You like it's just you can't regulate your emotions. You can't.
No.
And when you think about what we do as parents, we are we are case managers without being paid. I
Mhm.
don't know if you have case managers in the
Yeah.
States, but yeah.
Yeah.
So you're coordinating this juggernaut of services and different people who don't talk to each other and they don't
Yeah.
know that the other person exists. And you're doing all this stuff. You do that tired, you're already, and there's nothing wrong with being emotional. There's nothing wrong with that at
No.
all. But it can make some of our decisions like we can look back and you think, oh, that was no, maybe if I was a
Maybe
bit
I
more
shouldn't have made that
regulated. Yeah,
decision.
yeah. The tiredness doesn't help. But I think that there is something really key to we can be tempted when we are in a situation where the one of the people we love most needs us, we can be tempted by things that take a massive amount of commitment and
Hmm.
like kind of we can end up being sucked into the no pain no gain. It's
Hmm.
I know that this is a lot to ask, but we have got to do it. I know that
Yep.
he doesn't like it, but we've got to do it.
Yep.
We can get sucked in there.
Yep.
And as I like 25 years of working with people with complex disability has taught me that the gentler we are, the more respectful we are,
Hmm.
the better the results we get.
Yeah.
So when it comes to positioning, don't ever be tempted by the no pain, no gain. Like you just got to do it.
Yeah.
Like we know he doesn't like it, but it's just got to happen because
Hmm.
it doesn't work. The more comfortable you make a child, the more likely it is that you'll be able to try things with them. They will trust you to try things with them that they
Hmm.
wouldn't have anything to do with if you had, you know, yes, you've got to be in that position all night, 8 hours, you know? No, 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 no. Exactly. And they're the kids that can't write a letter of complaint.
Right.
They can't we are their voice as well as their like the um the conduit between them and the rest of a complicated world.
Yeah. And the thing is you will begin to see them saying no.
Hmm.
They're just saying it in a different way.
They're saying it in a different way.
Yeah.
And there's research, isn't there, around people with more complex disability and more complex communication needs
Hmm.
having poor mental health. And when we think about that,
Mm.
that kind of if we don't listen when a child says no,
Mm.
and I hear all the time, oh, he has a very high pain threshold.
Mm.
And I'm like, are we talking high pain threshold, or are we talking about a child that hasn't yet found a way for
To
you to
express it.
listen? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they've expressed it, and because of the level of disability, it's been overridden because it's like, no, but we have to, it's there's loads of there are so many things we don't yet know
Hmm.
and do really, really, really well.
Yeah.
Like this, we're still learning, aren't we, about people with more complex disability.
Well, it's
Um,
something interesting by you saying that. I'm glad that you said it because even for Bryson, my son,
mhm.
We always say he's a trooper. Like you just
Mm.
don't know a lot of times because he's not a crier, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even prior to his eye surgery, he wasn't a crier, but he had like pressure in his eyes up to like 31 when
Wow.
it was supposed to be 9,
Okay.
which was really,
Yeah,
really
yeah,
high,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, as parents, I'm so glad you said that. We should not say they have a high pain tolerance. It is more about they have not been able to express how much pain they are in.
Yeah.
So they just, unfortunately, they deal with it, but it doesn't mean that we should not acknowledge their pain.
Fine.
You know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. And
Yeah.
if a child with less complex disability, so there's a way of putting it as a parent. We could be saying, if so my child's called Abby. She's not my child. She's my 23-year-old. Um, so um so let's say that Abby didn't have a learning disability.
Hmm.
And she was having surgery. So she's had eye surgery and she's had all sorts of different things.
Hmm.
Um, let's just say if a typical child had morphine for however long, and then they had paracetamol, and then they had whatever, they will know, like your
Hmm.
your medical team will know the
Hmm.
standard sort of pain relief that all other people going through this procedure would have. So it's a good thing, hopefully, not in a crisis situation, it's more difficult. But if there's a planned procedure,
Hmm.
always ask the question, what's the plan for pain relief following this? What's the standard plan that you would expect for most children? Because my child deserves that.
Hmm.
My child
Absolutely.
deserves whether he's able to verbalize it, whether he cries or not, my child gets the same as the other kids that were going through that procedure because the assumption you're going to make is that my child is just as human as every other child that
Right.
went through. They just
Right.
communicate differently.
Yeah. I mean, that's another good nugget. She's dropping them today because
Mm.
and the thing is most parents, we just assume that
Mm.
maybe you're going to be told that information or that the standard procedure is being followed. But like you
It
said,
may not be. It
it
may
may
not
not be.
be. Yeah. And it may
So,
be I've been in situations before where people are, like kind of friends, kids who've had like major hip surgery
mhm,
and then they're on paracetamol afterwards. And it's like,
yeah,
no, no, no. This guy, like, you did bony surgery.
yeah. So it's
Like, just
really important.
assume that just assume the best.
Yeah,
Always assume capacity,
yeah.
assume understanding,
Mhm.
assume, kind of,
Versus not assuming
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So when parents are considering, maybe a postural 24-hour kind of thing at night, what things
yeah.
recommend that they ask or
Okay.
that they even know about? What things would you say that they need to
Yeah.
consider?
So the challenge that you've got if you're in the States is that it isn't a really well-known intervention. Whereas if you came to Europe, come and stay with me, Rita. Come and stay with me. We'll go and do all sorts of stuff. Um, so if you come to the UK, it's a standard intervention. So
Hmm.
all children at GMFCS 4 and 5 you would expect that they will be offered support for their lying position. So it's a bit tricky in the States because you may well know the questions to ask, know the things to look for, and you might still struggle to get either the therapist who knows what they're doing or the equipment provider that's able to help you.
Hmm.
But the, that doesn't mean we can't start. So the first place to start is not at night. The first place to start is supporting your child's lying during the day and
Hmm.
practicing and learning when you aren't sleep deprived and when your child is not like, what like kind of, this is not how we go to bed. Oh, okay, we'll stay up all night.
Right.
um so that's the first thing. So what we need to be looking for are signs that gravity might be affecting your child. So if you already know that there's things around their hips, then gravity is affecting your child.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that your child is starting to get any changes in their chest shape,
Mm-hmm.
then gravity is starting to affect your child. So those are the things that we look out for. Um, there are, I'm trying to, another question I always ask is, can you describe your child's sleeping position? And if you're like, yep, they are on their left side, their favorite side is their left side with this leg here and that leg there,
Mm-hmm.
and their arm goes here and that goes there, then
Mm-hmm.
that's like a big red flag to someone like me because I'm like, you shouldn't really be able to describe that because, like, if I think of my typical children,
Mm-hmm.
like they move so
Yeah,
much.
you
I
don't
have
even know. You're kind of like,
no, who knows? Yeah, but when it's like a really familiar, he lies on his back, his legs go over to his left, he likes his head on the left, and he likes this arm here. That's like, whoa.
Mm,
That like when it's that clear to a parent, because what we need to think about is that kids spend on average 3 times longer in bed than in school.
mm,
So if they're in that one position for a really long time, then it's gonna have an impact.
yeah.
So questions are, is my child already affected? Like, are there things happening with their body shape that I like lumps and bumps in their chest at the front, like rib flares at the bottom of their ribs,
Mm,
shoulder blades that stick out, like one shoulder blade sticks out more than the other. My child is always leaning to his left, always, no matter what we do. I'm always propping him up, and it's
mm,
always right, or he's always falling forward. So those are the sorts of things that we look for. And as a when a therapist really knows their stuff in this area,
mhm,
they look at body symmetry, they measure body symmetry. There's all sorts of things that they can do. But any sign of asymmetry is what you're looking for. So the one side of the body should look the same as the other side of the body. And if it doesn't, so like if you drew a line down the middle, down through your nose and straight
mhm,
down, you should be kind of doing the same thing on either side. And if you're not, like if your middle of your chest is not in the middle,
mhm,
or if your legs are always over on one side,
mhm.
that's the sort of thing that's like, we need to think about lying. We need to think about,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think so. You actually just dropped another nugget there, and the nugget was when you're doing your evaluation and your therapist is going through that evaluation, as a parent, you can ask about body symmetry.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if they look at it and they say, yeah, he's a little this or she's a
A bit
little,
wonky. Yeah.
then that's a good time to say, okay, so what do we need to do about that now?
Yeah.
Versus waiting until
Yeah.
later on. Just like she said, head on, you got to face it. I
Yeah.
know sometimes we want to do that, but
Oh,
we don't have the luxury to do that. So we
I
just
think,
have to do it.
yeah. And I think if you, um, so on the one hand, it's like we need to know this stuff.
Hmm.
And then on the other hand, it's not blue light. There isn't a siren going like, this is urgent. You sort this out today. How have you not done this
All
before?
right.
What was wrong with you? Like kind of, this is something that if you say your child's 7,
Hmm.
it's took them 7 years. Like you're not going to change it overnight. And why
Right.
would you change it overnight? You know? So give yourself the grace that you will give your child to learn some new stuff, to introduce it gently, gently for the child, gently for the family. Just
Mhm.
take, like, if you feel yourself get that kind of
Getting
like
worked up almost.
urgency, yeah, that urgency that's like, oh, it's got to be done now. Try to take a step back from it and just be like, just take a breath. We've got a Simple Stuff Works community group on Facebook, which we only started like 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
There are
wow.
some great seating specialists on there already. There's a load of families on there already. Like chat to other families, chat, wherever you can. Like
Yeah.
find really good practitioners who will tell you the
Yeah.
questions around seating. Sharon Sutherland is in that group,
Oh, wow.
like world's best, like one of the world's best seating specialists. She's in there, you know.
Wow.
Chat to her. Say, Sharon, your hair's great. Oh, by the way, could you just tell me? Do
Answer
you know
the
what I mean? Like,
question for
get,
me.
yeah. Could you just, what do you think, Sharon? Do you know, like, but she's there and she's
Good.
beautiful. She is so generous with her information and where to find stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's not blue light. It isn't. Don't be
Don't panic.
yeah, don't fall
Yeah.
into the trap of panicking, doing something crazy,
Hmm.
like making your child lie in a new position for 8 hours, and then be surprised when the next time you go near them at nighttime, they're like, get lost. Like, no, yeah,
That
go
was
slow.
it.
Yeah, be gentle. Be gentle with yourself.
Yeah, that's really good because most of us as parents, I know, even for me, I'm like, we gotta do it now. We need to hurry up and
Yeah,
do it. And it just
yeah.
doesn't work that way all the time.
No, no,
Yeah.
life in general doesn't work that way, does it?
You
No,
just kind of
anybody,
have to
just life
go
in
with the
life in moderate.
flow. So one of the things you mentioned was the Facebook group, which you said is
Yep.
2 weeks ago. So that's new. Are there other things that you guys are doing at Simple Stuff Works that you want to share with the parents?
Yeah. Our YouTube channel is everything I know. I have tried, well, not everything I know, because it's like a
You
load
know
of
a
stuff that's
lot.
of no use. Yeah, there's no use to anybody else. Everything that I know that I think is useful to this community, I am a massive believer in the more that we share with one another, like as a community of parents,
Mhm.
we become stronger because we, in the whole ecosystem of disability, my dear, dear friend Rachel Wright would say we have the fewest resources, the fewest agency, the least authority, and
Mhm.
yet we have the most responsibility.
Yes.
So the more we can share, the better. So our YouTube channel, so you just search Simple Stuff Works in YouTube, you will find tons of information that if ever you're bored, you've got 5 minutes, it's all there. And it's all the
Yeah.
stuff. It's not dumbed down, people. It isn't, oh, this is like a simple version for the parents. Because, like, newsflash, we didn't all arrive as like empty vessels. Do you know what I mean? Like, we actually arrived as like competent adults. Um, so it's all there. And it's the same information that I share with clinicians. It's no different. It's all there. You can get in touch with us through Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Sarah, Postural Care Clayton. So you can like get in touch. If I don't know the answer, I will know somebody who knows the answer.
There you go. Absolutely.
Totally.
I definitely believe that. So we talked about this not being as prevalent in the States.
Yeah.
But we do have access to you,
Yes.
thankfully. So for parents that, they have insurance or they don't have insurance, what funding options do you guys use for services? How do you do that?
So the way that we work in the States is we have a distributor who then works with dealers in different areas. Now, in some areas, that's really well established. So California, they're off, they're good, they have their clinical reasoning sorted out, they have dealers, they know what they're doing. Other parts of the country, it's more difficult. What I have learned is that whilst the USA is one country, it appears to be multiple different countries all squashed
Make some
into a
mistakes you're in.
country. Yeah, you seem to have like so that's what I've learned. It's taken me about 10 years to learn this because I just thought like, oh yeah, like once people start doing it in the States, they'll do it. No,
Yeah, it's all
no.
different.
There's some great people though. There's in Vermont, there is an amazing therapist called Pamela Cummings. I can connect you with her. She does loads of early intervention stuff.
Mm,
There is also a clinician called Annalisa Quattrione who has I adore this woman because she
mm,
has been turned down for insurance like multiple times, and
wow.
she just keeps appealing and appealing and appealing until she wins.
Yes, sir.
And every time she wins.
Mm,
So she's learned loads.
need
So
those
I can,
finders.
yeah, and I can kind of connect you with those people if people struggle. So your healthcare system, totally baffles me. I have no idea how it works. Ours is completely different.
Yeah.
But we are learning. So
Yeah.
bear with us, please, while we're learning.
Yeah. And
But we
like you said,
will,
it's just
yeah,
having the right people that have done those appeals, that have
yeah,
that information that they can share with
yeah,
parents, and just being
totally.
connected to the right people. That's really what
J-
it's about.
Always. Just
Yeah.
life in general is find the tribe.
Yep.
And I know the tribe. I know how to connect with them. And and they're all, I think in what I have learned in my 25 years and in my 17 years as a parent of a complicated person, I have learned that this community is full of stunning, generous,
Hmm.
gorgeous people.
Yep.
And there's loads of them that know loads of stuff about this area. So
Absolutely.
the States is a little bit behind, uh, but it's going to take you like 5 minutes to catch up.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. If you wanted to
Oh, it
leave
was my
just one
pleasure.
encouraging word for parents, what would you say?
It's got nothing to do with the postural care side of it, but what I would say is that it is all going to be okay. It will all be okay. You know, I have done and don't underestimate the trauma of what's happened to you and your child and your family.
Mhm.
Um, so Abby was diagnosed with cancer when she was 6, having like the most serious thing she'd ever had was chickenpox before that, you know? And I just thought the world had ended. And some days I still think the world ended.
Mhm.
But like 17 years on, keep connecting. That's the thing that I would do is just keep connecting with other parents and people who know like what it all is actually about, and it will all be okay.
That's the best word ever.
Hmm.
Really. Kind of settles you.
Yeah.
It really does. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Sarah, for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful night. And I
Oh, it's
will link everything in